Hello, I'm Aaron Anderson, an audio software developer at Dawesome. We've recently released a new distortion plugin called Hate. Today I'd like to give you a tutorial and show my workflow on this new plugin. To start off, we'll add Hate to a track. The first feature I'll address is a bypass button up here. This will allow us to hear the clean signal we're about to distort. And with the wet signal, this is just the default preset. If you're new to Hate, one of the first things you'll want to do is scroll through all of these presets and find some things that you like. Since we have a guitar as the input source, I will sort by guitar, and then I'll scan through a few of these just to give you an idea of what Hate can do. I'll leave scanning through the rest of the presets up to you. Today I'll show you how to build your own preset. My first step is always clicking Init. This puts every parameter in the most transparent position. If you listen now, we barely have any modification whatsoever. My next step is picking a wavetable. Hate uses transfer functions and uses slices of various transfer functions in a row. This allows you to adjust the slice to adjust the timbre of distortion. To use a different wavetable, you can right-click and select from some pre-made wavetables. Or you can drop an audio file onto the wavetable and it will automatically be converted to a series of transfer functions. For a guitar tone, I'll use fracture. I'll increase drive a little bit so we can hear the distortion, and then I'll move the slice around. As you can hear, the flatter part is barely distorted at all, but as we add these waves and these waves intensify, we get a more intensified distortion. Now I'll find a slice I want to keep. The next thing we can adjust is a parameter called edge. Turn to the right, edge will increase the distortion amount, and turn to the left, the distortion intensity will decrease. The next parameter I typically adjust is freak tilt. Freak tilt will keep the low frequency content when turned to the left and keep the high frequency content when turned to the right. I often like to remove a little bit of high frequency content by turning to the left. This gets rid of the high frequency content, which is helpful because we'll get more high frequency content from the distortion itself. The knob below freak tilt is called punch. When turned to the left, punch will maintain your transient part of the signals, and when turned to the right, it will maintain the sustained portion of your signals. For electric guitar, I'd like to remove a little bit of the pick sound from the distortion by turning sustain up. This next knob is called image. When turned to the left, it will keep the monophonic sound, and when turned to the right, it will keep the stereo sound. Today, this will not be useful for us because we are only using a monophonic signal. I'll leave this at 12 o'clock. Warp is another parameter, and this one is a little hard to describe. You can see it visually as you adjust warp. When warp is all the way to the right, it will squish the high amplitude portion of the signal, and when turned to the left, it will squish the low amplitude portion of the signal. Since it's hard to describe the effect of this, I'll just play the guitar and move this knob. Flat does something similar. When turned to the left, it bypasses the low amplitude portion of the signal, and when turned to the right, it bypasses the high amplitude portion of the signal. When a portion of the signal is bypassed, it is effectively not distorted. One last feature in this upper portion is auto gain. Auto gain, when turned fully to the right, will make sure that your input signal is the same amplitude as your output signal. This is useful as when you adjust drive, it will maintain this signal's amplitude while only changing timbre. When reduced a little bit, the increased drive will ever so slightly increase the amplitude of your signal, which may be desirable as you automate drive. When turned all the way down, auto gain doesn't do anything whatsoever. So as I increase drive, it will make the signal louder. You can see here we're coming dangerously close to clipping. Using auto gain is one thing to help with clipping, but another aspect is the built-in limiter in the output. If I click lim, it will turn the limiter on, and while it's limiting, you'll see an orange light appear, and if it ever clips, that orange light will turn red. One trick I like to do to increase the drive sound is to add a compressor before any of the signal chain happens. So I'll do that by adding another instance of hate. I'll move our current instance of hate after our new instance of hate. Now if we look at our new instance, we have the default state. I'll init that. And to add a compressor, first I'll organize these windows so the signal chain is more clear. This instance of hate will happen before this instance. So I can bypass this wavetable since we'll be getting our distortion from the second instance and add a compressor. When I use a compressor, I have a couple tricks I like to use. I like to turn the attack up slightly, release up a little bit more, and then increase the ratio all the way to the max and increase the threshold. And then while I listen to this signal, I decrease threshold until I hear the transients being smashed a little bit. To do this, I'll bypass our distortion unit. Once I find the right threshold, I decrease the ratio to a reasonable amount and adjust this by ear. Now we'll turn the distortion back on, and then we'll listen to the effect of this compressor by bypassing and unbypassing the signal. Now we can add some fun effects to the actual distortion unit. I'll start with a delay, and then I'll sync this delay right now to a quarter note. I'll reduce the highs in the feedback loop, and I'll also reduce the lows to prevent it from getting muddy. While I am auditioning a new effect, I like to turn the wet dry all the way to wet so I can hear just the effect. Once I have the effect sounding the way I want it to, I decrease the wet until the blend is what I'm looking for. The last effect I'll add for this guitar distortion is another distortion unit. It can be fun to stack these, so I'll add distort. And then now we have an additional layer of distortion. Now I'll switch the order. I kind of want this distortion to happen before the delay, so I'll switch the order by clicking and dragging. This gives another parameter to automate that will affect the level of distortion. And with that, we have completed the first tone for our guitar distortion. Let's switch gears and add a distortion to a synthesizer. One thing I really like to do is use very clean synthesizers to start with. In fact, today we'll be using a sine wave synthesizer. I'll play that for you now. Using a clean signal allows us to get all of our timbre from Hate. Here's what that sounds like with the default preset. As with our last case, I'll start this preset with the init preset. Now everything is neutral again. I recommend trying a lot of these. If you're using a sine wave synth, this wild category is really useful. Today I'll use the wavetables called spectrums. You can hear we're getting a lot more harmonics in the signal now. Now I'll adjust these knobs, and I won't say much about it since we've already discussed what these knobs do. Now I have my bass timbre, I can start adding some fun things. With this module, I really like to just play with the knobs and see if I like what happens. I'll add Atari Punk now. This is one of my favorite modules. Before I adjust this, let's bypass that module and make sure we adjust this blend to what we like. For a moment, I'll bypass this module so we can just hear what Atari Punk is doing. Another one of my favorite modules is called grains. This will granulate our input signal. I'll also just adjust these by ear, and I won't say much about what these parameters do. If you have a long tail like we do now, you can click the skull to cancel the tail. I'd like my granulars my granulation to be a little bit smoother, so to accomplish that, I'll feed a delay into the granulator. And the last action I'll take here is to just decrease the mix until I get some of that sine wave back. I want some of that sine wave here because it gives a really nice bass presence. And you can see we're not quite getting the full range we could get from this output. So I'll add a gain knob. I'll turn this limiter on, and then I'll increase the gain just a little bit. And that's where I'll leave it. I hope you have as much fun with Hey as I do, and I hope to hear it in your next track. Thank you.